Can the Republican Party find a presidential candidate capable of toughing Barack Obama out of office? Well, the battle for the Republican nomination is proving to be protracted and brutal. But right now, the main beneficiary appears to be the man already inside the White House. My guest today is Senator John McCain, who ran against Barack Obama 4 years ago and lost. Is the struggle to find a convincing Republican candidate this time around indicative of a party that has lost its way? Senator John McCain, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you. I'm glad to be with you, and our relationship goes all the way back to the year 2000. You haven't aged a bit.
That's the first untruth you've told me, but let's get down to business and talk about the Republican nomination process. To quote the esteemed political science professor Larry Sabato, the Republican Party is making its nomination process a big mess. Do you agree?
I do, to a significant degree, and that is, I think we've had way too many debates. The purpose of debates, as you may recall, when following the campaign in 2000, was for the candidates to give their views on the issues and their positions on the issues. And if they differed, then there would be perhaps spirited conversation. And there were exceptions to that. But generally speaking, it was about issues. Now it's just about who can launch the toughest attack on the other people on the stage. And that is, one, not educational and informational, but two, it does drive up the unfavorables of all of them.
Well, it does indeed, and let's talk about the man that you've endorsed for the nomination and the presidency, Mitt Romney. Now, I learned that he has already spent more on attack ads than you did in the whole of your presidential campaign in 2008. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think one reason is because thanks to the worst decision in history by the United States Supreme Court, we've unleashed these tidal wave of money, special interest money in this campaign. I mean, you may have seen that.
Sure, but I mean, he has the choice of being positive or negative. But Mitt Romney, the man you want to see in the White House, appears to believe he can only win the Republican nomination by being extremely brutal and negative towards his competitors. Because
the sad truth in American politics is that negative ads move numbers. That's just the reality of American politics. The day that they don't move numbers will be the day that politicians stop using them.
I've learned a new acronym just in the last few days. That is ABR, anyone but Romney, and I've heard several Republicans say it. Why is it that Mitt Romney, for all of the money we've talked about, you know, and the passion he seems to have for the job, in the sense that, you know, he got knocked back in 2008 and he's back running again. Why is it, for all of that, he simply isn't connecting with so many Republican voters?
Well, I think he is connecting. He got close to 50% of the vote in Florida, the first real diverse, heavily populated state. He did extremely well in New Hampshire.
And in all the rest he did very, very badly, and where his performance is actually much poorer than it was when he ran against you in 2008.
I think that his performance, actually, as far as percentage of the vote, is much higher than it was in 2008. All I can tell you is that I know that there is a certain segment of the Republican Party, not a large one, but a segment of the Republican Party, that don't believe that he is, quote, conservative enough. And the thing that's entertaining about that is that both Newt Gingrich and Rick Santorum engaged in this obscene practice of earmarking. Hundreds of millions of dollars in pork barrel earmark spending, which, in the view of one of my colleagues here in the Senate, that earmarks is the gateway drug to corruption, and they're calling them conservative?
Sure, but if you're going to make an argument for Romney based on the other candidates' use of political money,
That's a problem, because Mitt Romney has more political money sloshing around in his campaign fund than anybody else. And indeed, he is the only candidate who is a multi-millionaire who we now know only pays 13% tax.
But let's not mix apples and oranges here. Earmarks are the taxpayers' money.
No, understood.
Romney's money is his own money.
Sure, but it's a money argument, and if you're making a money argument in support of Romney, it seems to me you have to address this issue that the American public has seen now, that this is a man who is unbelievably wealthy, but a man who stores a lot of his own cash in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland.
Well, of course he didn't. I mean, it's just some of the investments that he made did put that money in, but he never made a direct one. But the fact is that he has the experience, the knowledge, the background, and the business acumen in order to lead the country. In my view, that's why I endorsed him.
Is it the case, do you believe, looking back at your own experience as well as Romney's, that it is very difficult to actually win the Republican nomination and maintain policy positions that can appeal to the wider general American electorate?
Look, I don't like to take trips down memory lane, but George W. Bush was able to do it twice. He was a conservative, and he was elected, a narrow margin, but he was elected and re-elected to the presidency of the United States. Ronald Reagan, Bush 1 was elected.
But maybe the Republican Party is changing fast and becoming more dominated by the social conservatives.
I don't think so. I think that Romney, again, proved in Florida that there's a very large number of Republicans who are centrist to conservative. And again, I challenge the attacks on Romney for him not being conservative enough. I've seen
Senator,
him
back in 08,
for lower taxes, less government, less regulation. I mean, and so...
But I look back at the record in 08, you said of Mitt Romney, and of course you were his opponent, so maybe you would have said some of these things, but you very clearly and adamantly said this guy is, quote, a phony and a serial flip-flop.
And you know, if you look back at President Reagan and then George Herbert Walker Bush and their campaign, tough things are said in campaigns.
If you thought he was a phony then, many Republicans think he's a phony now.
The fact is that frankly is the rhetoric of a heated campaign. And 99% of the dialogue we had was respectful. And I would say after I won the nomination, nobody worked harder for me than Mitt Romney.
But what we see right now, and I'm thinking about the recent successes of Rick Santorum, is that these quote-unquote values issues are rising to the top of the Republican nomination debate. That is, issues concerning gay marriage, concerning abortion, issues where, again, Mitt Romney appears to be...
Look, those issues may in the debate, but please don't be under the illusion of what the American people care about. They care about jobs and the economy. The country's in trouble. Now, there may be discussions about those issues that you told about, and it may attract a certain electorate, but I'll show you poll after poll after poll. 80 to 90% of the American people say the number one issue is jobs and the economy. And that's why I think that Mitt Romney has the best opportunity to be our nominee.
One final thought about your own career. Do you now regret making Sarah Palin your vice presidential running mate? Because it opened the doors to a whole bunch of social conservatives who now appear to be profoundly influential in the party.
Well, let me just say, facts are stubborn things. And the fact is that before I picked Sarah Palin, we were running behind. After she gave her speech at the Republican National Convention, we were ahead. We stayed ahead until the day the stock market went down 700 points. We went from 3 points up to 7 points down. Sarah Palin energized the Republican Party, and she gave it a momentum that no other person I would have selected could have achieved.
And that's a fact.
Now, she's been trashed by the media. She has been assaulted continuously by the media. She beat Joe Biden, a 30-some-year United States senator, in the debate she had with him.
Everything you've just said.
And the fact is that she is still very much admired and appreciated by our Republican Party.
Well, I feel the passion in that answer, Senator, but it didn't actually directly address my question. Do you regret?
Of course not.
You don't?
Of course not. I don't know why I should.
You look then, and you appear now, frankly, in many of your positions, to be out of sync with Sarah Palin's brand of republicanism. She, for example, is not going for Mitt Romney, she's going for Newt Gingrich, and she says that the Republican establishment, to use her phrase, is trying to crush Newt Gingrich.
Sarah and I never agreed on everything, nor did I expect to. I mean, after all, she's her own person. And look, I believe that she stands up for the things she believes in. On most everything we agree. There's sometimes we disagree, that's all. But the myth is being conveyed out there that somehow she was harmful to our chances of winning the 2008 election. It's not substantiated by the facts.
Let's talk about the economy, because you said that's what Americans really want to talk about.
Yes.
What Americans have seen in the last few weeks is, at last, some real signs of good news. They've seen in January almost 250,000 new jobs created, unemployment down to 8.3%, a significant reduction. Good news. And is it not the case that this can only help Barack Obama and make the Republican case much more difficult?
It depends on the trends of it, obviously. Look, I want good news in the economy. I don't care who is elected. I mean, but I think that we will make the argument that this has been the longest and the weakest recovery in history since the Great Depression. If we passed the stimulus package, they said unemployment would be a maximum of 8 and down to 6 by now. We are now $5 trillion more in debt than we were when he came into office, and we have fundamental differences of opinion. He believes that government creates jobs. We believe business creates jobs.
Well, one real difference right now, a specific difference, is on tax. The Democrats are pushing to extend the so-called payroll tax reductions. The Republicans say that can't happen unless there are some cuts in entitlements at the same time to try to square off the budget. Now, the Republicans also seem to be the party that is determined to maintain tax cuts for the very richest Americans. It seems a difficult place for your party to be, opposing tax cuts for the working class and the middle class, favoring them for the very rich.
I think that's excellent conventional wisdom that you just articulated, but the facts are that we want to pay for these tax cuts. We think that government is big enough that we could find ways of reducing the size of government, not entitlements, but reducing the size of government so that we are not increasing the national debt and we are not taking money out of the Social Security Trust Fund that otherwise would be going into the Social Security Trust Fund, which everybody knows is going broke.
A final point on domestic politics, then I want to move overseas. But the most basic question of all is this. You clearly believe Mitt Romney can win the White House. If the Republican Party does not select Mitt Romney, and one can only assume unless there's a surprise new candidate, that would mean they would select either Newt Gingrich or Rick Santorum, do you believe the Republicans can't win?
Well, I believe it's much harder. All the polling data show that Mitt Romney either ties or is slightly behind, depending on which poll you look at, and the others are way behind the president.
Can Santorum or Gingrich conceivably win?
I have to believe the polling data.
You're saying they can't win?
No, I'm not saying they can't win, but I'm saying it would be much more difficult, according to polling data, which is well known, that it's much more difficult, but not impossible.
Would you support them? Would you support a Gingrich or a Santorum in a race against Obama?
I would support the nominee of my party.